In order to be creative, I have to have a certain degree of intelligence. But beyond that, there seems to be no relationship, because some people that are very intelligent have about as much imagination as a piece of gravel. And other people who don't really seem to be scoring high on those IQ tests, they're quite imaginative and quite brilliant people in terms of their creative capacities. So there's no relationship. And the analogy I'm drawing here is with the reed. We know that the reed, in order to play the high register, has to have a certain minimum amount of strength in relationship to the mouthpiece itself. But beyond that, there's no relationship. If the reed has enough strength to play those high notes, it doesn't have to be really any harder than that. Much more critical, once you reach that minimum strength in the reed, much more critical to get the high register to to respond dependably and evenly, is the balance of the reed. The balance of the reed has to be extremely good, and then you'll be able to play throughout all the registers, not just the high register, but throughout all the registers very smoothly, with a very minimum amount of change in terms of embouchure and air pressure. I'll give you an example here. I'm going to do very little changing here. Very, very little changing. And if my reed weren't really well balanced, I wouldn't be able to play those pitches, and I certainly wouldn't be able to play the soft pitches and attack them very well. And speaking about attacks, that's really kind of another episode altogether. But you have to have the air there and the voicing there really very well if you're going to play attacks confidently in the high register, especially attacks that are soft on certain notes. But like I said, that's another episode. Besides having proper tongue position for voicing, you also have to have the air there. The air support has to be correct. Now, in the Ed Guide, I detail and make a distinction between all these various things about the air. It's just not having the quantity of air there, it's having the quality of air there. And by qualities, I mean the speed, the shape, the compression, and even direction. All those things will influence the sound and the ability of the sound, your ability to make the sound respond and respond well in all the dynamic levels. So learning how to blow correctly and use the air correctly, getting very sensitive to that along with tongue position, is extremely important. Well, I've drawn the camera up here to this kind of scary position because I want you to be able to focus a little in on the embouchure here for this final part. And it deals with one of the other things that's very, very critical in playing the high register, and that is getting control of the reed and freeing it up at the same time. Get that? Control the reed more and free it up at the same time to get those high notes to really sing out and to respond dependably, but without biting. Now, in the embouchure episodes, previous ones, if you haven't seen those, I'd recommend you go back and look at those, where I talk quite a bit about what biting is. We don't really have time to go into it in detail here, but suffice it to say that it's simply the closure of the jaw, pressing the reed to the mouthpiece by closing the jaw or pressing the jaw up into the reed. It's not cool. That's not cool. And what it does is actually kills the high register, destroys the high register. If you feel like that you need more control of the reed, to add more pressure on the reed, then the worst way to do it is to close the jaw down, because that pinches the reed down and decreases the amplitude. When you're going to play the high register, your biggest single friend outside of the air and all that stuff is this guy right here. You've got to go thumbs up. So when you're playing the high register, you're not going to be able to see this, but for instance, when I play, say, high A to high E, what I do is I incrementally lift slightly so that I snug a slight bit more of the reed into my mouth, depending again on how responsive the reed is. So if I play high A, what you can't see is that I'm lifting with the thumb there, da dee, and the mouthpiece is going slightly up and snugging a little more firmly against my lips, and that gives me more control. And the reed itself is moving more into the intensity of the airstream, and the tip is moving further away from the pressure point, so the tip is actually freer. So the note comes out very well. So lifting, and with the proper tongue position, then the high register is not difficult to play at all. And especially you have the right fingerings, you have a well-balanced reed, you're not biting, you're using a right airstream, good airstream, and you're doing the snugging, you're going to have a lot more success at playing the high register. The worst thing that you can do in playing the high register is drop your air and increase your embouchure pressure. And that's the thing that we reflexively do when we begin to play the high register. We have to train ourselves to do actually just the opposite. The air needs all the integrity that it can have. And the last thing in the world we need to do is be closing down and biting to get those high notes up. You know, we might get them to respond by biting, but then you lose all your depth, all your flexibility, and all the singing quality of the sound. So that's a very destructive thing. You don't want to do that. If you adhere to these things we've gone over, let's see, I kind of scribbled them down here. Let's see, what were those again? You need a well-balanced reed. You need to blow properly, obviously. You need the right tongue position. You need the right fingerings. And you need to add your embouchure pressure by snugging, by thumbs up, lifting with the thumb, and keeping the embouchure nice and firm as you snug the reed mouthpiece wedge against the lips. Those things all combined is going to give you a lot of success. If you try it the other way, try it with hard reeds, try it by biting and all that stuff, you may have a little bit of success, but you know, it's all kind of marginal. It's all kind of marginal. But if you work on applying those, if you'd like more detail on that, you can get it in my book, The Educator's Guide to the Clarinet. And if you want to know more about fingerings, like I said, there are about 200 and some fingerings for the last octave of the instrument in my book, Clarinet Fingerings. It's all available on our website. Visit us if you get a chance, and if you haven't already, subscribe.